Welcome to the Journal podcast from the Chartered Insurance Institute, a place of thought-provoking discussion from the world of insurance and beyond, giving CII members and the wider profession an insight into key developments across the sector and the work of the CII, a professional body dedicated to building public trust in the insurance profession. I'm Tim Hurst, Social Media and Production Manager at the Chartered Insurance Institute. Today I'm talking to Anna Reddy, founder of Leap Health, provider of bespoke, innovative and simple corporate wellbeing and wellness solutions, to discuss the impact of health and wellbeing in the workplace and some tips on how to improve your physical and mental health. Here's my conversation with Anna. Hi Anna, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. Just so our listeners get a bit more about you, do you mind just giving a quick introduction about yourself and your organisation Leap Health?
Absolutely. And thank you, Tim, for inviting me on the podcast today. I'm excited to be here. So my background was actually in pharmaceuticals. I was in pharmaceuticals for over 18 years. So I've worked in lots of different disease and therapeutic areas, which I find really fascinating. With lots of different healthcare professionals. But what I really found a real missing gap really was the first stage of most NICE guidelines for different disease and therapeutic areas is lifestyle interventions. And we just really do not exploit this area to its full potential. And that's what I really want to empower other people to be able to do. Equally, being in a pharmaceutical world, there's lots and lots of money thrown at learning and development. Really fortunate to listen to the most amazing people and experts in the field. However, years and years ago, before health and wellbeing was really anything, I was always frustrated by being maybe in a dark room with lots of unhealthy snacks, no time to take away from the learning, maybe free bar later on. And then the people that invested in all that learning and development maybe wondered why they hadn't got the best return on investment. And learning development and health and wellbeing were just worlds apart. And for years and years, I had this frustration. And I guess that's what's brought me to where I am today to develop Leap Health, which is really all about empowering other people to steer their own journey with the health and just really dig into those small steps that can leap health, wellbeing and performance. That's a little bit about me, Tim.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. And it sounds like, you've been on a bit of a journey yourself in terms of that. So sort of focusing more on health and wellbeing within the insurance and financial planning professions. Do you have any sort of specific data you can share around how that is impacted for these professionals?
Absolutely. And I will share a bit of that with you now. And just to give a bit of context to the listeners, I have been working with Chartered Institute of Insurers and personal finance societies for quite a few number of years now. So I've connected with quite a few of your members. They've probably listened to some of my workshops as well. But during that time, I've built up a really good understanding of what goes on in your world and really what some of the challenges are. But some data I'd like to start with, which I think is quite staggering, really. And this was from research which was carried out by Mental Health First Aid England only last year, where they interviewed 100 people in financial services. So not specifically to insurance and personal finance, but in financial services. And actually, 83% of employees in financial services have considered changing the jobs due to the impact on the mental health. So it's a really high proportion that are, really seeing the impact on their mental health. And I often wonder how many employees actually know that? How many employees actually know what's going through their staff's head? And we totally listen a lot about quiet quitters and those people that are secretly struggling in the background. We hear a lot about presenteeism, so people working with suboptimal health. And it's often really hard to determine what people are thinking and how people are feeling. And this is where we've got a massive opportunity to break down those barriers. But most importantly, empower people to be able to prioritise the health. And out of that survey as well, 60% said that their employees could do more. So there is lots and lots of opportunity out there for us to do more. If we look at stats as a whole, Deloitte's mental health report, which again was published last year, 2024, they estimate that mental ill health costs the UK economy £51 billion per year. So if you're not bought in to the fact that health and wellbeing impacts on your turnover and your employee output, so listen up to these stats, that's £51 billion it's costing the UK economy. But they also identify as well that for every pound that employees invest in their employee wellbeing, they're going to get about £4.70 in return. So again, listen up to this. You all like return on investment. and making smart choices. But I said that's collectively in all industries in the workplace. I did find some data as well, specifically around insurance. This is a small study around 405 full-time insurance professionals, and this was based on the US and UK. But what it did show is that 88% of the respondents acknowledged stress and anxiety were really key issues in their industry. And then what was interesting when you looked at the UK and the US was that nearly half, so 46% of UK insurance employees said they were unable to manage the stress and anxiety with their employee-provided benefits. So this kind of correlates with that initial stat from State England, where 60% of their employees weren't doing enough. So nearly half of insurance employees, but actually in the US, it's only 22%. So there's a big difference in the UK and the US. So we've got lots and lots of opportunity. And then, this is the biggie, when we move to personal finance, there's hardly any data there at all. So we just don't exactly know what's going on. And this is, again, a key opportunity to get that valuable data, because unless we have that data, it's really hard to act upon it. And I hope that gives you a bit of a understanding in terms of what's happening in terms of the stats.
No, definitely. Some really staggering figures there. I mean, the fact that people in financial services, there's almost 4/5 are looking at changing jobs. And then you've got the 60%. It's big numbers. And like you said, those billions that could be saved, and in fact, even reversed, just by providing access to better support for people who are struggling with mental health and well-being, that can make a huge difference. So you've kind of touched on this a little bit. So is there anything specific you've noticed in terms of health concerns for insurance and financial planning professionals compared to other sectors? Like, is there a difference when you've been doing these presentations with like some of the local institutes and regional committees and so on? Have you noticed a stark difference talking to them than you have to people working in other sectors?
Yeah, and I think every sector is very different and at a different stage within health and wellbeing. And what I have particularly noticed in this industry is that, particularly in personal finance, is that there's not a lot of young people coming through into the industry. And this is what was highlighted. I did the summer exchange meetings last year, and this is what was highlighted at the beginning of each of the summer exchange meetings, is that you need younger blood coming into the industry. And it's wonderful to have all that experience and knowledge with the older generation, but we do need to be engaging those younger people as well. And when you do look at the data, younger people value that health and wellbeing more than the older generation. And actually, in many cases, they will put that as a higher priority than actually what the salary is. So that's the key observation from the industry. Also, in terms of the nature of the job, it's quite sedentary, isn't it? There's quite a lot of people working from home as well, which has its benefits, but also has its challenges as well. And again, I think this can be different in terms of different generations as well. I mean, working from home, maybe if you're a little bit older and got lots and lots of commitments, maybe caring commitments and things like that, it can be really beneficial. But if you're younger, you need to be learning from those experienced people in their organisation. You need those water fountain chats where you can just pull on their knowledge, and you need that connection as well. I think young people can be missing out on so much connection. And I think the way that the world's gone, we underestimate the importance of that socialisation and underestimate the detrimental effect that loneliness can have as well. So I think, those are two key observations. Also, as everyone listening will be very aware, particularly in personal finance, when it comes to like tax year end, you can have real fluctuations in your workload. It can become overwhelming. And there's lots and lots of things that you need to keep updated with as well.
I mean, you touched on the end of tax year being quite a busy time for financial planners, but I mean, would you say there are any sort of health and wellbeing challenges unique to either the insurance or financial planning professions?
I'll be quite honest with you, when it comes to health and wellbeing specific challenges, I always think it's relevant to absolutely everybody. There's certain little differences within each industry, but unless you're an alien or someone from a different planet, we've all got health and wellbeing to manage. And I feel that the crucial thing is looking at you as an individual and maybe not tarring everyone with the same brush. Oh, you're in this particular industry, you need to do this, you need to follow this. What I really encourage people to do is look at their own individual self, look at their own environment, look at their own world, their own body, their own challenges, what maybe they're predisposed to, and make solutions based upon their own individual self.
Great. It's really interesting to hear. And just sort of going back to a couple of things you were saying with these professions in particular, they're quite sedentary, a lot of office work, a lot of sitting at desks. What are some of the common physical health issues you see arising from this?
Well, there's multiple, there's lots. And obviously, the obvious ones you think about, maybe, your back pain, repetitive strain, eye strain. And these are probably you're at greater risk when you're working from home because maybe, it's all determines how your office is set up and if you've got your desk at the right height, your chair at the right height, those kind of things can impact on your musculoskeletal health. But then as well, it's far too easy now just to have a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, and it's just become the norm. And I think this is where we need to make a change and we need to challenge it a little bit more. And in the office, you probably get up or out. If you're going to speak to people a little bit more, you've probably got a little bit more opportunity. But I think this is something that we need to challenge a lot more. Not moving, that impacts on your cardiovascular health. It impacts on so many things, but it also impacts on your brain health as well. If we're not moving, we're not stimulating those neurochemicals in our brain, which are really important for our mental health. If you just get out for a little bit during the day, you start to stimulate those neurochemicals, which boost your creativity, create clarity. We all know that you can be sat at desk for ages working on something, and yet when you actually get up and move, all of a sudden that problem that's been there for a long time just seems simple. So it's about changing the norm. So I would really encourage anyone when they're thinking about booking a Zoom meeting or something that's online and something that you sat down, just really question, does it have to be online or could it be a walk and talk? Could I walk and phone someone and have that conversation? If I'm in the office, do we have to sit there face to face discussing that? Could we just get out and have a walk and chat? And 9 times out of 10, you get far more out of people when you're walking. And I would say walking side by side outside is the easiest way to have open conversations and get through those business problems really quickly because you're creating that clarity, but you're creating that open space as well for honest conversations. So I think it's really about challenging the norm a little bit more.
It's great. And some quick tips in there as well about, helping improve that sort of health and well-being, talking about movement and stuff. Looking back at sort of say like the last sort of 10, 15 years, back to sort of where you said you started up your company, have you seen like a shift in the way that health and well-being viewed and how that's developed over that time? Obviously, we've had COVID in the middle and that change from always in to always at home to this hybrid model that a lot of companies are taking on. Has that had a huge impact on sort of health and well-being, do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for years and years, health and well-being was, for many years ago, it just wasn't on the agenda at all. And then it was a bit of a nice to do thing, wasn't it? It's like, oh yes, that's a nice thing to do. Whereas now it's a need to do thing. Organisations have specific budgets now for health and well-being. And if they don't, then they're probably behind times. But 10, 15 years ago, there just wasn't that there at all. I myself was massively in the minority by prioritising training and things like that. It was far more acceptable during your working day to sit in a cafe, in a hotel, complaining about everything that was going wrong in the organisation and maybe to get out for a walk and get a bit of fresh air. But it's far more the norm now. As I said, for years and years, learning and development just sat on its own, didn't it? There was no correlation with improving, as I said, your brain health by moving or fueling yourself well or getting that connection. No one would have ever owned up and said, I'm struggling right now. Burnout wasn't a topic at all. It's just massively changed. And I think, COVID was a real kickstart to that. And I think it's been really, really positive. I do think, though, with everything, there's a certain level that we've got to get the right balance of as well. And going back to that younger generation that you're wanting to attract to the industry, I think it's all about offering them those wellbeing solutions that they want, but also making sure they are getting the connection that they need as well. And I think things have changed as well. I keep seeing lots of changes in terms of like networking. I was only talking with a region of your PFS members and not so long ago, and they're wanting to boost networking. Well, historically, networking's all been about a free bar, hasn't it? And, you'd network over having a drink and everyone was best mates because they'd had a few drinks. And I think we're starting to rethink that a little bit more. How do we actually do genuine networking so that we're really getting to know people as an individual, minus the bar and all the drinks that fuel it to give you that confidence? But how do we build up real relationships that have a longevity and actually are meaningful rather than those ones that we used to do in the past?
Do more juice bars, less wine bars, yeah?
Maybe. I do sound like a bit of a bore, don't I? I'm not against a few drinks at all, but I'm just about common sense that if you're going to fuel everyone with loads of alcohol, you can't expect them to be mega productive after that.
No, absolutely. And just sort of like, again, thinking about those changes over the last few years, you mentioned earlier about the movement to a lot of more online meetings, sort of weird recording this over Zoom at the moment, but that sort of scenario. Do you think technology has had an impact, whether positive or negative? Because obviously there's been like developments like Peloton, for example, and there's other services out there that allow people to sort of do virtual exercise classes. And obviously you've got wearable devices, but like you say, there's also that, especially hybrid, when you're working from home, hybrid working, you spend a lot of time in those virtual meetings. So do you think there has been negative and positive impact by technology over the last few years?
Absolutely, definitely. It's a real enabler in lots of ways, but then it's a real hindrance in another. But I think this is like anything in life, and we've got to just be able to take control of that, haven't we? And take the best of what's there and block the things that maybe distract us or may, have a detrimental effect. And we're going to have to get even better at this as AI advances. And I think this is what we need to empower people to do, is just to make the right, smart choices. Ages ago, it would have been just a case of you've got to go to the gym for an hour and a half. You've got to sweat it out in the gym, and that's the only way you can exercise. It's so easily available for us to do that. And particularly, as you said, when you're working from home, again, this can be a benefit and help you, or it can be a hindrance. We're obviously missing that commute in a morning and an evening. But if you decide, well, actually, I'm going to spend that commute time exercising or doing something to help me, my well-being, that's a real benefit. So I think we've really got to just cherry pick the things that we can use from technology and maybe put blocks in place for the others, and using the world of Zoom to our advantage and make sure that we're using that time we're saving on commuting and investing it wisely, rather than just spending it maybe on social media or extra Zoom meetings that we don't actually really need. But yeah, the world of Peloton and online workouts are just amazing. And this is something I think as well, we need to rethink how we move. So often we think it's all about all pain, no gain. But I truly believe that you can actually enjoy what you do and fit it into your world. And if you are wanting to make smart choices when you're working from home or in the office, it's got to be something you enjoy and something that you can.
Yeah, it's really good. I know that like during COVID, I used to use that, like you say, that commute time and just go for a walk because of being stuck indoors all day and, limited interaction with other people. And I found that really beneficial, not just for my physical health, but also for my mental health, because it gave me a clear distinction between when I started my work day and when I finished my work day. And especially as a lot of people spend their time working in their bedroom. So it's kind of almost like they're just living in one room. Thinking about that, are there any other sort of simple yet effective self-care strategies that people can sort of incorporate into their daily routines?
Definitely. I'm going to introduce you to the Reddy method. But before we go on to that, I'm just going to come back to your point about lockdown. And if anyone's ever thinking, I can't be bothered to move, I don't want to get out today, I always say, cast your mind back to March 2020, when you were told you can only get out for 1 hour a day. How much do people want to get out then? Everyone was itching to get out. So if you're ever thinking, I've not got the energy or can't be bothered to move today, just cast your mind back to then and that feeling then. And when you think about moving as well, often people can't be bothered or they don't have the energy to do it, but it's just first 5 minutes, isn't it, that you've got to get through, and no one ever after that thinks, I wish I hadn't done it. So in terms of like how you can really look after yourself, in all my workshops, I use a Reddy method. So probably a few people listening have heard this already, but then I do deep dives into different areas of this. So the Reddy method is R for rest, recovery, recharge, E is for eating well, A is for activity, E is for distraction management, and why is for you. So if you're wondering right now, I don't know where to start, I don't know where, just listen up and try and pick out 2 or 3 things from this method that you think, I could just put some small steps in today. Or even if, I said, there'll be times in the day or days when you wake up and you just think, I don't feel myself. Just have a check-in with this and see how you're actually helping yourself in all of these areas. And is there something that's just missing right now? So the first one, I said, is rest, recovery, recharge. I'd argue this is one of the most important. And I think as we've evolved through health and wellbeing and awareness, I think the importance of sleep is increasing as well, and people are recognising the importance of that. And years ago, it was all a case of I'll sleep when I die, and I haven't got time to sleep, and resting's a sign of weakness. Well, far from it. If you fail to rest, you're just massively reducing your productivity. And it's quite interesting though, that public health haven't caught up with this just yet. We've never had a public health campaign on it yet, but it impacts all areas of our health. So when we sleep, it's a really, really restorative time for both our physical and mental functions as well. A bit like the cleaners going in your brain and flushing everything out. And what we do see with people who don't rest and get that adequate sleep enough, there's a greater build-up of amyloid in the brain, which is actually associated with Alzheimer's as well. So it's not just that short-term complications that we need to think about. It's the long-term complications that we need to think about as well. And we also spoke about the impact of being sedentary and sat down quite a lot in an office or working from home, which can provoke cardiovascular risk and increase the risk of diabetes. When we sleep, this resets all our hunger hormones. So that leptin, which gives us a sense of satiety, the ghrelin, which makes us feel hungry, and our insulin levels as well, which are really related to diabetes and how our body can break down sugar in our body and take it to the right places. So if our hunger hormones are out of sync, that can put us at greater risk. And we all know if we're tired, what do? We crave for those unhealthy snacks because our hunger hormones are all out of sync. So it's all about just making sure you're getting that good quality sleep, making sure that you're switching off at night. So you're not checking your emails till late at night. You're not engaging with things that's going to play on your mind till really late at night. And it's changing the cultures in organisations. It's changing the norm. So if you think, oh, well, I'll fire off a lot of emails late at night because then it's off my mind before I go to sleep, what you've probably done is they've landed in someone else's inbox, which has kept them awake all night because they're looking at them thinking, I've got to sort this out. So, oh, well, you might be nodding off to sleep thinking I've cleared my inbox. Everyone else in the organisation is wide awake thinking about it all night. So just put simple strategies in place, maybe delaying all your emails. If you work late at night because that fits in your schedule, that's fine. But make sure you're delaying those emails till the next day. If you're a leader and you put in some kind of wellbeing program because you think it looks good for you as a leader, but then you fire off a lot of emails late at night again, or you're showing people that you're working all hours, God sends, and not taking your foot off the gas, that's not leading by example. You've got to lead by example. So yeah, going back to that rest, recovery, recharge, making sure that you're getting good, adequate sleep, making sure that you are taking breaks during the day because productivity levels do dip. So just that walk around the block, set a timer or get someone to phone you and say, right, let's have a walk around the block. Just make yourself accountable and do that because it just resets your mind and it's really important. Gone are the days of the hours you work. It's more about how productive you are during those hours. So try and change that mindset. The next one is eating well. And often when we think about eating well, we think about physical image, don't we? People maybe trying to get a six-pack, trying to get in a certain dress size or something like that. But I just really encourage you to reframe that again. Think about fueling your mind. So even though your brain is only 2% of your body weight, it consumes 20% of your calories. So rather than thinking about that, am I going to seriously cut my calories to lose weight? Just think about, am I going to fuel my brain like it's a Ferrari, like it's a serious machine? Think about investing in your brain, all you money people. Think about how you're going to invest in your brain. So think about all the nutrients that are really going to support your brain health, such as like your omega-3s, making sure that you've not got peaks and troughs in your blood sugar levels, making sure that you've got good quality proteins. And we often think of protein as just building muscle, but actually it's really important for your brain as well. And there's lots of other things. There's smaller nutrients, such as like magnesium, B12. Try and get an abundance of these things in your diet. And also think about your gut health. And there's lots of publicity around gut health, but lot of your signals from your gut go to your brain through the vagus nerve. So you really try to get an abundance of fibre and those probiotics as well. And that's just a time that I do deep dives of all of these in specific workshops, but I don't want to go down a rabbit hole now by giving too much away. But again, when you're thinking about how you're feeling, think about prioritising. Prioritise the nutrients that you need as an individual. When you think about depriving, all you do is you want them even more. So prioritise what's important for you. Think about your brain and make sure, particularly again, when you're in the office, try and have healthy snacks available. We're all human. And people talk about willpower, but I believe willpower is utter nonsense. I think we need to put strategies in place. So, if you're the type of person that takes all the leftover birthday cake in for everyone else because you don't want to eat it at home and you'd rather that all your colleagues ate it, maybe think about them as well. If you're someone who, when you're at home and you get an email that you don't want to address to and you just tiptoe to the fridge or to the cupboard because it's better than addressing your email, make sure the healthy snacks are at the front and maybe the cookies and things are right at the back. So prioritise, think about your brain, and put obstacles in place to the unhealthy ones and have the healthy ones visible. The next one is A for activity. We've kind of touched on this quite a bit, but again, it's not all about just doing an hour or an hour and a half. Break it down into activity snacking and reframe it again as it's like something for your productivity, something for your brain health, something to make you feel happy, and just find little pockets of time when you could do that during the day. If you know that you've got something that you need to have really good focus on, just think, right, I'm going to get a bit of movement before this. I've literally just been for a wander around the block before I did this podcast to give me a bit of clarity before I did it. Just try and reframe how you need it. Make sure you enjoy it. But also, which is really important, is think about your pre-workout. That is as important as doing your workout, because what happens before creates a habit. And if maybe it is that you download a podcast that you really want to listen to, but you won't let yourself listen to it till you get outside, that gives you an incentive to get out, create those habits, because you can make all these grand plans, but the most powerful thing is having a habit so that you don't actually have to think about it. D is for distractions. And you've kind of touched on that a little bit, Tim, haven't you, with the technology where we can become really, really distracted. And I often talk about your positive noise and your negative noise. Be really, really aware of what's your positive noise and what's your negative noise. This can actually be people. Some people really drain you and some people really, really inspire you. And it's not about making a list of who you don't like. It can actually be being a bit more curious to understand them more and actually understand the good things in them so that then they become positive people. But be really aware of what your positive noise is and your negative noise, because that has a big impact on your well-being. And if there's something that's really playing on your mind and is negative, just try and overcome it with that positive noise. Big plug here. I think podcasts are a wonderful way for positive noise. So get listening to this podcast more and maybe check out, I've got a Leap Health Workplace podcast as well, but just get that really good dose of positive noise. And the last one is you. This is the most important thing. And again, going back to your point, Tim, around what's specific to the industry, there's a few things that's specific to the industry, but what is most important is people as individuals, addressing health and well-being as an individual. What's going to make you wobble is probably going to be totally different to what makes somebody else wobble. You've really got to think about, as I said, things that maybe you're predisposed to. So that could create your reason why you're going to prioritise your health, because you could be at risk of something. Lots of things are genetic, but the way that they pan out and the way that they show up can be down to your lifestyle interventions. And then think about, your world. What are you trying to juggle? Are you at a stage in your life where you're trying to really fast track in your career and learn loads and loads of things? Are you at a stage where you're trying to manage family? Are you trying to care for elderly relatives? Just try and think what's happening in your world and how you can really make that specific to you. And I also do a lot of work around understanding your energy for impact, which is really quite unique in terms of how we think of things now. For years and years, we'd always think about that, well, we're not too good at this. Let's try and develop in this area. This kind of knocks it on the head and looks at, well, these are my strengths. These are things I naturally enjoy. So I'm going to do a better job of them because I enjoy them and I can make a greater impact. So try and think about that energy for impact as well. But think of you as a real individual and think of other people about that as well. Be curious with other people. Ask them about what they struggle about. Ask them how you'll know when they're struggling. Share a bit about you. Sharing a bit of vulnerability helps other people feel at ease as well. So there's so much you can do. So I know that was quite a long-winded answer around the Reddy method, but hopefully there's a few little nuggets that people can take away from that and maybe just think about 2 or 3 little small steps you could start to implement.
That's some really good advice there, Anna. I definitely be making notes about the Reddy method. It actually reminds me of some tips I've seen before about 5 different things a personal trainer I worked with suggested to improve your health. And he was talking about movement and sleep, like you said. It's a huge one. When you're tired, you don't make the best choices in terms of food and so on. And again, thinking about what you're eating, it's bits and pieces like that. It's just so simple, but you don't necessarily think about it. Everyone just thinks, oh, I need to get healthy. I need to go to the gym and, lift lots of weights or go running and stuff like that. Whereas actually it can just be doing a lot more movement. Even vacuuming the house can actually help get that heart rate going and stuff like that. So no, some really useful tips there. Thinking more across sort of how businesses, I've already talked about the fact that a lot of them have like wellbeing strategies and mental health strategies now. What do you think businesses can do to foster a healthier working environment for their employees?
Okay, so going back to that start at the beginning where 60% said that maybe the workplaces could do more. On the positive, that means 40% are doing wonderful things. So it's not all negative, but I think there's a real opportunity. And the first thing is to recognise and realise that wellbeing does improve productivity of your staff. It will improve your overall success of your organisation. Maybe a couple of stats to back this up as well, which was a study that was carried out by which looked at senior leaders who were sleep deprived by up to 45 minutes a night, but it reduced their executive functioning by 5 to 10%, which is a lot to have that reduced productivity of your senior leaders due to lack of sleep, which again could just be a case of educating and putting wellbeing things in place. In that same study as well, which is also interesting, it showed that leaders who had less sleep, it correlated with less psychological safety from the team. So the people below them felt less psychologically safe around those senior leaders. If you want to get the best out of your people, they've got to feel psychologically safe. And I think this is a big opportunity to develop that because trust is the foundations of lots and lots of things. So I think this is a real key starting point, is that we've got to recognise the importance of it. And remember that £1 in investment will give you £4.70 in return. And by building that psychological safety in organisations, which is the foundation, people start to show a little bit of vulnerability. People start to be able to change the game a little bit more. And this is where we can learn from younger people who do probably prioritise their health and wellbeing a little bit more. It's not hierarchical. Older people can learn from younger people can learn from older people. And that's why we need this psychologically safe environment to be able to do that. So recognition, psychological safety. You've then got to empower people and motivate people to take ownership of their own health, because you can offer them all you want. You can have the most amazing benefits there, but if people don't engage with them, then they're pointless. And this is what I find really, really often in organisations is they'll say, well, we've got also, we've got this, we've got that. And then you say, what's your actual engagement like with those things? And it's minimal, and particularly EAP, which is a massive thing, a massive, massive opportunity. Lots of organisations have EAP, but generally the engagement is really, really low. And I think this is often due to misunderstanding that actually no one ever finds out who's contacted EAP. All a company gets is numbers, the number of employees that have got in touch with EAP. And I think employees are frightened of anyone finding out and that confidentiality being broken when actually they can't do that, which is one of the problems. But I think the other problem as well is that we use it reactively. We wait till we get to the stage when we can't see the wood for the trees, when we're really down and we're really, really struggling. And then we try to contact EAP then. And by that time, you're probably struggling that much. You can't even find the telephone number for it because you probably deleted the email that came down from head office with all your benefits on because you're that busy and too important to read it, that then you don't know where to look for it. So I think we need to encourage people to be proactive. In all my workshops, I'll say, right, this is your EAP number. Do you let them get their phones out for a minute or two? Put it in your phone now so that you've got it before you get to a stage where you just have no idea where to find it. And use it proactively, because you generally have quite a few counselling sessions which are there for free. If you had to pay for them for yourself, believe you me, people would engage and people would use them. So try to use them a little bit more like life coaching rather than when you're in a really, really difficult stage. Use them proactively to prevent you getting to that really, really difficult stage. So I think we've got to use AAP more proactively, encourage people to do that, and get over that misunderstanding that confidentiality will be broken. So get people to engage with what you've got, empower them with all the information that they need, the knowledge that they need to make smart steps so that they're not trying to do everything, they're cherry picking what's important for them, empower and educate them. That's the next stage. The next stage then is making sure that health and wellbeing is contagious in your organisation. So get people to start spreading what they're doing, create a buzz about it. The more people you can get energized by it, the greater chain reaction you have. The more it's going to spread in your organisation, the more cultures are going to change, and the more it's going to become the norm to prioritise your health and well-being. And just to add on to that, senior leadership and leaders do need to be leading by example. Going back to my example around emails and maybe them not taking breaks, maybe thinking they're too important to save the EAP number, things like that. You've really got to lead by example if you want a genuine shift in your organisation. So going back to that, we've got to recognise the importance of health and wellbeing. You've got to empower and educate your employees. You've got to engage them with what you've already got there. And senior leadership have got to lead by example.
Just sort of on that last point, is very much about organisations need to sort of foster a culture thinking about people's well-being and health. I know that some places had to encourage employees, regardless of where they are, to think about when they're booking meetings in people's diaries, because it's so easy for people to book in back-to-back meetings, especially online. And, people don't get that time to even just go to the toilet. And interestingly, I think Outlook, other email services are out there, but Outlook has that functionality to automatically cut your meetings down by sort of 5 to 10 minutes, which at least gives people that little break time between meetings. And I know one strategy I took in COVID and I've kept was blocking out my lunch, because it gave me a reminder, right, you need to take that break. You need to step away from your desk for that hour. And I think that's something that personally I feel a lot of companies can do, is just to make sure that they're reinforcing the idea that think about when you put in meetings in people's diaries, like think about, have they got time between meetings? Are you putting in back-to-back-to-backs? Otherwise you do just, again, go back to that thing of you're sitting around looking at a screen all day and not getting up, not moving and not thinking about yourself. And that lack of movement actually leads to a bit of being lethargic, doesn't it? And again, goes back to that thing of you don't then have the mental energy to get up and do things when you finish work.
Certainly. And I think what you're describing there on making sure you're taking that break, those are things that companies should really be rewarding for and recognising. And maybe it should be frowned upon if you sat there back to back in meetings all day, because of the fact that you are reducing your productivity. Like I said, if you don't move, you do feel lethargic. And as I said before, those problems that you're struggling to solve are never going to get solved. After you just need to move and stimulate your brain and then create that clarity.
It's just been really great conversation with you, Anna. I think we could carry this on all day, but I think people listening might have to do another lap of the park or something if we carried on. So just to finish off, are there any resources or support systems available to people who might be struggling with their health and well-being, or even just those who want to make that sort of stepped improvement? So any places you could recommend or any sort of resources you recommend?
Yeah, definitely. Again, just going back to your point, I hope people are walking and listening to this as well. I'd really recommend it. And maybe we should put that in the show notes. Take a break away from your desk and listen to this while you're walking. So yeah, there's loads and loads of resources out there, but you've just got to cherry pick ones which are credible. I'd really look at what you've got internally in your organisation. Question to yourself right now, how many emails have you deleted which have come down with what your benefits are because you've got that many emails to address and you deprioritise it? Go and look in your deleted box and find all those emails with what you've got available. Don't just keep it to yourself, share it with other people. Find your EAP number, maybe text a few of your colleagues to save it in the telephone. Just try to look at what you've already got available, because often it's right in front of you, but you're not engaging with it. You've probably got people in your organisation as well. We often forget that. But sometimes just showing a little bit of your vulnerability means they open up as well. And maybe they've been through things that they can really help you with, that's going to help you now, but also build your relationships for the future as well. There's lots of things online, obviously, organisations such as Mind, Mental Health First Aid, which are really reputable sources. I've got lots of resources on my website that are free and available for anyone to use. I've also got my podcast as well, which has got lots and lots of different episodes exploring different areas of your physical, mental health and performance at work as well. But I'd start looking at what you've already got available, because often it's right in front of you. And go back to that Reddy method. It's really simple. And more often than not, you know the answers yourself. We complicate things too much, but often if you take a moment to press pause, think about those 5 pillars in the Reddy method, and often you know the answer yourself. So just be true and honest with yourself.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today, Anna. It's been really insightful hearing some of your tips and some of the data you've been able to gather for us, and looking at ways that people can improve their health and well-being. We'll definitely include a link to your website in the show notes. And after I finish this recording, I'm going to go for a walk. It's between that or a lie down. I don't know yet.
Walk.
Well, once again, thank you very much, Anna, for joining us on the podcast today. It has been a real pleasure.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Journal Podcast. You can find useful links in the show notes and related articles on the Journal website, along with further podcasts. Please like, review, and subscribe. Until next time, goodbye.